Hi everyone, I hope you're doing really well. It's a bit worrying now, isn't it, with what's happening with the Houthis? Where's it all going to lead? But it's Anglo-America again, United States, Great Britain, right where I said they would be. Get prepared for them being the last world power, people. It's going to happen one day, so if it doesn't happen on this watch, it'll happen one day. Right, let's get back to this new light, because I had a few comments which I really had to give a lot of thought to. Some really good comments. So I've come up with this new sentence: is new light new evidence? I've got an explanation. This is how I see it. So my explanation will start with a criminal investigation. And you're a detective, and you're part of that criminal investigation. And on day one, you're only given so much. The crime's just been committed, and so you'll go back to the station, and the investigating officer or the senior officer will say, this is what we've got so far. Day one. That's new evidence. New light. Could be the same thing. In this case, and this explanation, I'd like you to believe it was the same thing. New evidence is new light. Okay? That will help me explain this. So on day one, you've got very limited light or evidence, but it's all you've got. Another day passes and more evidence is dropped on the case. And so you pin the new evidence to the board, to the whiteboard, or wherever. You've seen these police series, haven't you? Where they have day one and they have pictures and they have a certain scenario of what happened on that day. And then day two, this is putting together a case. This is how they do it, isn't it? I mean, I'd like to be a detective for that reason, because I'd find that a very, very fulfilling job, putting together pieces of evidence like that. Pretty similar to being a truth seeker, really, but this is the real world, isn't it? If you're putting together evidence on a case because you're trying to catch a killer, you know, there'd be a lot of satisfaction in getting that right. So, day two, yes, you've got a bit more evidence. New light, new evidence. I'm using this phrase a lot. And day three occurs, and again, you get more evidence dropped. And so you pin that to day three, and you stand back, or the investigating officer explains it all to you, what you had on day one, what you had on day two, and now what you've got on day three. So what he's now saying to you is, don't take any notice of day one, because, you know, we've got new evidence now. So you can forget about what happened on day one, because it didn't happen just so, or the way in which we thought it happened. But that was because they were very limited in what they knew on day one. But on day three, they've had a lot more evidence dropped. New light, new evidence. The phrase again. And so you go through each day until eventually you get to the end of the case. And when you get to the end of the case, it's almost like you've put together a succession of jigsaw pieces relating to each day that you've been gathering evidence. So you've got to the last day, and it all of a sudden, it starts to make a much more rounded sense than it previously did. And you're getting to the point now where you're about to solve that case and catch that killer or whatever criminal that you're after. You're getting so close to cracking the case as the investigating team. But what you don't do, you don't go from A to Z like that. You never go from A to Z in an investigation scenario. You are putting together increments of evidence. And sometimes it's very slow. And sometimes you get bogged down. But just say that you were a detective on the investigation team and you said that you're not prepared to accept the new evidence. Can you imagine what would happen? Would you slow down the investigation if you were the one that was dragging your heels and you were still clinging, and I mean clinging, to day one's evidence or new light, new evidence. You wouldn't be growing, you wouldn't be maturing as a detective if you kept on harping on about day one or day two, when the rest of the team have forgotten about what happened there because they've now moved on much farther down the road and learnt a lot more about the case. And so you would be left behind at that point. And in your Christian search for knowledge and for Christian maturity, if that happened to you, you would be left behind, because everybody else will have left what they learnt at the beginning, and they would have been moving on to what they're learning in the future. New light. That's how you explain it. But you can't go from A to Z. You have to go A, B, C, D. And there's a kindness about this all as well from the Heavenly Creator. He wouldn't expect you to go from A to Z, because your human intellect is very limited as to what you can absorb. Even if you like to consider yourself a very astute person and person who picks things up very, very quickly, the Heavenly Father still makes concessions for all humans that they need to be brought on slowly. Some need to be brought on slower than others. And so, in that regard, there's a lot of kindness there, a lot of understanding about human limitations. And you can see how the Heavenly Creator has shown this kindness to humans right from the beginning, how he has always allowed them to at least try. He did it with Lot. He allowed him, didn't he? Even though he could have just turned around and said, you're wasting my time here. I'm going to do this. But he didn't. He allowed him some time to thrash out his little idea about finding a righteous person. And you will see examples of this all through the Bible, where he has recognized human limitations and been more patient with those. And he did it with the nation of Israel, did it with Moses, and he's done it countless times. So it's this embracing of new light that will help you mature as a Christian. You will mature a lot quicker if you embrace new evidence, new light. But if you cling and you refuse and you stay to what is old and stale, then you are in danger of slowing down everyone else. Going back to the investigation team, the poor detective that decides that he didn't want to move forward with the investigation team, the only outcome for that one would be that he would have to leave the investigation, wouldn't he? Because the senior officer would see him as a hindrance to the rest. They've moved on. They've learnt a lot more. And he hasn't. And that is how you explain new light or new evidence. That it's not disgraceful what you have learnt previously. It wasn't useless in that sense. It served a purpose at the time, and it was all you had until something came along that was much more clearer. Now the question is, who is the one that is making these things clearer? Not yourself, but a higher authority who's decided, after being patient with you, that it's time for you to learn more. And so he takes you farther down the road of your investigations and your truth-seeking and soul-searching. He takes you farther down because he will have looked into your heart and seen that you were worthy of being taken to the next stage. Because you don't want to remain a spiritual babe when you're not. There is nothing more frustrating than not learning than just treading water, going nowhere, almost being stuck in quicksand. You're not going to get out. But when you are moving from point A to point B, C, D and E, in an orderly fashion and learning along the way, there's a great deal of satisfaction and fulfillment that fills your life. So don't look down when someone says, this is new light. It's always a good thing. It's almost as if your eyes have been widened even more. They were probably wide, but they weren't wide enough to accept new evidence, new light. And that is how I will explain all the comments that I've received, and I did receive some really, really poignant ones, which I really took on board. That God does allow for our limitations, because I guess he loves us. You know, you can say what you like about it, but I guess he loves humankind to be patient with them this length of time. But that patience won't last forever, will it? I thank you for listening to me today, and I hope you like my comedy background. I was going to come on today and tell a couple of jokes, but I thought, no, the way the world is at the moment with United States and Great Britain's recent interaction with the Houthis in Yemen, I didn't think it was right to tell a joke. I feel really deadly serious about what could now happen. But I'm glad I can't look into the future. All I can do is just hope that my search is going to bring back fulfilling answers. I thank you for your time. You're all great.